Late in the day, so we're going to try and wake you up with some fun insights, twerking robots, and a bit of controversy. So thank you all for the panel, coming from broad and wide. I think we have a pretty interesting selection of folks. Limor, CEO of RoboSavvy, and as I said, his favorite robot is his twerking robot. But actually, he has quite a bit of insight and passion about the world of where robotics is going. Alia, who was the first account executive at Slack, based in Dublin. Hopefully, many of you here actually know the company or are actually clients. Philip van Kamegen, who's the director of the Digital Innovation and Transformation for Salesforce, based in California, originally from Paris. David, who's the founder of Work.Life, a co-working space, now 5 locations across London, doing some interesting stuff with corporate partnerships as well. And then Justin Lyon, founder of Simidun, based here, but as his accent will tell you, he's not from around here originally, but some interesting stuff around predictive insights and visualization. And I'm Christian Hernandez. I'm a dark side VC, but in a former life, I used to work with some of these technology companies and building technology companies, and now I'm trying to invest in them, based in second home right down the street. So let's get started and talk about the future of work and automation. But let's probably talk about the past first, and then we can kind of build up as to where we think the future is going. In the recent past, right, we've seen a couple of things start to happen. Self-employment is actually becoming more and more prevalent. In the UK, I think it's now close to 20%, expect to go to 30% in the next couple of years. You were saying, David, that you expect to be 40% by 2025?
Well, in the US, they estimate by 2020 there'll be 40% of the employment market will be self-employed, which is about 70 million people.
So some significant implications, including the fact that today, if you're self-employed, you actually cannot get a credit card, technically, because you're a thin file. The on-demand economy and the definition of when you work and where you have to work and what you can actually do and how you can have multiple roles. The recent rise of, obviously, artificial intelligence, but also automation and robotics in factories and plants. One of the largest Facebook investments in Europe is a data center that they have in Sweden, which has a grand total of 4 employees, because actually you don't really need anybody to manage the data center. But I think what I wanted to start with the panel was asking, where we are today and the role that your companies have played in getting us here, and the type of companies that you work with and actually supporting the evolution of what we are as workers and the evolution of what we define as work. So I'll pass it on to the lady first to talk about Slack.
Well, I guess for us, there's a lot of really cool stuff that's going to get talked about, but I work on our enterprise side of the business, meaning I work with the largest enterprises here in Europe. And we talk a lot about digital transformation, and for some organizations that is going to be bots and really like high-tech stuff. But for most of the teams that I'm working with, like digital transformation has more vanilla flavors than that. It is things like transitioning their development teams to agile. It could just be moving to the cloud for the first time. It could be connecting silos between organizations that have never previously, like business units that never really communicated in the past, and making sure that they benefit from that knowledge. So we are kind of the execution layer on top of those various flavors of digital transformation. So we're going to be the place where these users engage with each other, where these employees engage with these new systems. And of course, part of that will be things like automation and bots.
So I'll give you a bit of a 30-second plug for Slack. I mean, there was plenty of other communication tools out there when you guys evolved from a gaming company into a communication platform. You're one of the fastest adoption enterprise software companies ever, if I remember correctly.
Fastest growing enterprise software in history.
Yeah. Why?
Rolls off the tongue.
I mean, literally, there was already a bunch of tools out there. What made Slack take off so quickly?
I mean, this is only my opinion, but I feel it very strongly about it. I think it is the way that we think about our customers, so it's empathy. And I know, I don't know how much empathy will get used in this panel, but in a lot of the panels that I come to, that's something that we spend a lot of time talking about. And that is just thinking about what it is like to be an employee at any of these companies. And you've got this. When you talk about technology in the abstract, I'm not sure how much value it has, but when you actually think about an end user whose day-to-day job involves doing that shitty menial task that you're going to now make easier for them and make their day nicer, I think that's why we've been so successful, is just really obsessing over the users.
So I'll pick on Philip because he's actually next to you, and you guys actually work together in terms of Salesforce and Slack. So How do you guys, how do you driving digital innovation and transformation for your clients?
Great, thanks. First of all, I want to echo everything you said. It's very similar,
Yes.
but it's really brilliant how it's aligned also there. So yeah, what we've been seeing, so basically our teams work equally with some of the biggest enterprise companies across the world, and really concentrating on what are a couple of the key elements that actually could be taken out of a task, that could be automated, right? How you can enhance this? How can you do this way better? There's so much work to be done there in most big corporations, even medium-sized, by the way. All the silos that are still in place. And I mean, there's been progress, clearly. I think many companies now have the basic layers starting to be in place, some of the connectors that are needed, but the core piece is still, and that's why we apply design thinking techniques, is indeed digging deeper in this empathy. How is somebody working? So we got really obsessed with what is work like, and why is work not more like our life, right? Why is it not more easy, contextual, to the point, right away with the right information, inspired by the things like Uber, like Slack, etc. That's how things should be. That's what we're all expecting throughout all the different ways that we operate in a company. And so that is really already causing now some impact, but I foresee still a big future impact on that.
And now I'll turn it over to Mr. Robot Man. I mean, you obviously have a passion for this. We actually were talking about like some of your ideas in the space. Talk a bit about RoboSavvy, how you ended up launching it, and what you actually do with some of your clients and users.
Yeah, so RoboSavvy, my company, has been around for 10 years, and we've been developing different custom robots, some mostly in the entertainment space. Other than that, we've had a community of robot builders, and we've sold largely to hobby and to research and education, anything to do with robotics, and later on 3D printing and tools for makers. We also have this lab where we do these crazy projects in robots, humanoid robots, twerking robots, and recently we've started developing an artificial intelligence for robots in general. So that any robot that can move, any utility, will share an artificial intelligence that will allow him to understand the environment, understand people, move around among people, and engage with different payloads, with different missions. So in the robotic world, what we see this transition of in terms of displacing humans, it's quite dramatic, and it's happening now on an exponential scale. So obviously in industry, robotic arms have been the thing for forever. Doing physical labor and replacing people over time, especially in the car industry. However, what's different now is that mobile robots are being introduced into warehouses and factories. They've been around for 30 years, but now there are around 70 startups or different companies that are selling mobile robots for logistics applications. Anything from moving pallets, moving boxes, delivering last mile delivery. So it's within the realm of self-driving cars. There are self-driving robots that move stuff around, logistic. It's deemed to be a $1.5 trillion market. And there it's literally displacing. We're involved now in a project where we are displacing 5 people. The organization wants to displace 500 people. We're replacing with just logistics operations, indoor, outdoor, of moving stuff around. So the change there is really dramatic, and so that's kind of where things are in the robotic space. So it's moved from these robotic arms that do clever stuff to mobile robots that are moving things around with people, without people. And obviously in the near future we'll see the cost is being driven down, so you'll have a combination of moving robots with robotic arms going all the way from industry through enterprise and ultimately into our homes.
Well, actually, the publicly best funded AI company is Anki, which is a toy company. right? I think it's 145 million, which is kind of ironic that all this hype around AI and the best funded company would be this cute little thing that looks at you and smiles when you smile back. But I think it's the beginning of the democratization of smart robots in our home. It's pretty expensive though. I just bought it for Christmas. So Justin, let's go to you and end up with David. So you've been doing AI before AI was cool.
Yeah.
And you help build AI systems to help people make decisions in their day jobs. So talk a bit about the company and how you actually work with clients.
Sure, yeah. So I work with a company I'm the founder of Simudyne. We have a software product called Providence.ai. So we primarily help banks automate a lot of their decision making behind the scenes. We have worked with the Bank of England for, I don't know, 5 years now. We have started expanding into helping oil companies as well with that sort of thing. And it's all about sort of taking models, human intelligence, and codifying that in a way that you can connect machine learning with it. And then in the short term, you can have the humans in the loop, where they can sort of watch the system make the decisions and sort of say yes or no. But very shortly, what we're trying to get to is a point where we can get rid of the humans, and that drives significant cost reductions on personnel cost. Most people don't get really upset when I say we're firing the bankers, so they seem to like it.
Now, David, I wanted to end with you because actually what you've built is a platform for this new economy in which we all think about work and where we work and how we work a bit differently. So a bit about the voyage, about how you've actually opened up these 5 locations and why you feel, I mean, I don't know how many co-working spaces there are in London now, but it seems like there's a lot.
A few of us, yeah.
But where do you see it going in terms of kind of the ability to work in a physical location or the need to work in a physical location?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, co-working the co-working sort of was a fringe industry, and now really, really quickly it's become sort of mainstream. And I thought we were talking about it earlier, it's driven by 2 things. Number one, this massive entrepreneurial boom, every year, especially in the UK, but globally we're seeing record numbers of new ventures. London obviously is a key centre for that, but we're seeing that across the UK. And just from a simplistic space perspective, you've got a dichotomy between small businesses who need flexibility and sort of an institutional property market, which is very slow moving and very old school, and the two don't match up well. So co-working and flexible spaces offer a bridge. But beyond that, I think there's been a really interesting attitudinal change in the way, in the work people do. Obviously, this move towards freelancing, and also what they expect from work. You only have to look at places like Google and Facebook and what they deliver. I'm sure Slack and the other companies up here, and the emphasis they put on the spaces they provide for their team is because people are expecting more from work. And so what we try to do for small businesses is really to be able to give them the perks that you would have got with that you would expect at a bigger business, and really help CEOs retain and keep their staff happy. The really interesting change that we're seeing in our market is bigger businesses now connecting with spaces like ours. So we've got people like MTV, Dr. Martens as members. The reason they're doing it is they're far more focused on project teams now. So they're putting project teams of developers into space like ours because they want flexibility, but they also want them to be in an environment they can flourish in. So we're seeing it driven by a couple of things, but certainly it's a trend that we don't see slowing down.
Yeah, but also the definition of work. I think you think about historically, right? Why we had to go work. We had to go to the farm and actually get food so we could subsist. And then we actually would go work for a feudal lord and actually go till the farm on his behalf. And then, I mean, even still in the Industrial Revolution, you had to go work because that actually gave you income to go buy the food. And still today, for the majority of the world, they work for a fairly low-level salary to actually primarily subsist and actually maintain their family. And I think many people in the room, we can consider ourselves extremely lucky that we probably work in some sort of knowledge economy or some creative work where there is a different level of reason or options that we might have for why we do what we call a job. So I'd love to get your take on how the definition of job is actually going to change in the near future, right? The difference between on a spectrum of what's a job in terms of like just having to work to get an income versus what's a vocation or something you have a passion for versus actually what even is the definition of leisure and how you see that line blending between one and the other. And I think you're seeing it already today with on-demand economy where people can decide to work or not work, when people actually decide to work from a co-working environment. I'll open the floor to whoever wants to go first.
I'll jump in. I think that increasingly, and this is not my idea, the idea of lovely jobs where it's your passion, you get paid really well. Most of us in Silicon Valley or in London's tech scene, we're doing lovely jobs. We really enjoy what we do. If we're lucky, we make lots of money doing it. But there's a large number of human beings that have lousy jobs. They get paid shit amounts of money. They hate their jobs. They do it to survive. And I think we're going to see a lot more lousy jobs. And and if we see the balkanization of cities and more and more people, that could be really bad for us because you could have large numbers of people that are stuck doing lousy jobs. Increasingly, they get automated. What are they going to do? They're going to rebel. So I don't know. That's my view.
I'm not sure how much I buy into the oncoming revolution or the rebellion.
Sure, yeah.
That might be a little too forward-looking for me. But I do think it is easy to focus on, jobs that are going to be displaced. But at the same time, we don't spend a lot of time talking about what those. So the average team using Slack reports a 32% increase in productivity. What does that 32%, if we look at who historically, big enterprise or SMB has gotten the most productivity out of their workers, let's say productivity is defined as whatever you're paying a worker versus what you're actually revenue divided by what you paid your workers. Enterprise got way better value and way more productivity from their workers than did the average SMB, small to medium-sized business. Now, tools like Slack, tools like Salesforce, being able to get co-working space, these are things that were not historically available to the SMB sector, and these really fantastic productivity tools are now theirs as well. So I think that there's a big opportunity that we'll see those teams being able to be more effective in the work that they do, even though they are smaller organizations.
Yeah, if I can add to that, the increased importance of agility. Of course, we're seeing the gig economy, both as, I would say, small entrepreneurs, self-employed, however you want to call it, but also within companies, right? Gig economy, working on projects, being way more agile and shaping where the attention needs to be. Hence adding more value where the human can add value and probably indeed taking away a lot of jobs. There's likely waves coming upon us, but again, if you try to predict where those waves will happen, then you can be a bit proactive and start retraining. Clearly there's a lot of tasks today that are actually tasks that are perhaps not even meant to be done by a human because they're just indeed super boring. Can we retrain all these people? I don't know, but can we have faith in the human capacity to evolve? We had this amazing story of a hairdresser coming to tell us how she realized that she had to kind of like move on in her career and started learning the basics of Salesforce online, et cetera, go through basic certification, become an admin, type of job and tripled her salary in no time. And I think there's a lot of capabilities today that are offered to increase, to shift, shape, and change what are you doing and what is closer to the human core. So yeah, we can of course be negative of displacements, and
yeah, sure.
We know that the world has known big displacements, but I think we shouldn't underestimate the resilience of the human. And indeed, all the productivity gains that can be reoriented. In our company, for example, super important in our value is the amount of time that we give back. So our productivity gains internally, we orient them to giving back, doing projects, teaching children new things, helping elderly. And we track all these things, and we celebrate this in our ohana, in our own family. We're trying to make also a model out of this.
So I have a bit of more of a doomsday scenario here.
You guys should compare your doomsday scenarios.
The way I see it is, with the evolution of robots, is that within sort of 10 years, we're going to see some serious social upheaval, because there will be a situation where no matter what you've done, you followed the stream and you did your degree and you're a nice person, there's nothing you can do for another person that's worth anything.
Yeah.
Because between AI in the digital world and the physical world, it can be done by super efficient machines. And so the question will be, it's unlike in past history when, yeah, there was the Industrial Revolution and people found new jobs, and every time there is some paradigm shift, people manage to shift around. The problem this time around is that the number of people on the planet is increasing on a I don't know, exponential, but it's dramatically
Geometric,
increasing. Yeah. And the way that the world works, it's dominated by efficiency. We are striving to be more efficient, more competitive, and so the price to pay of letting go of people is an optimal price. And so if and when the computers and robots can replace people, they will. And then the question is, will humans be able to do something for other humans? Not everybody. Anything to do with empathy or basic human emotions and stuff, I don't believe robots. All this notion about robots dealing with old people, that's not going to happen. But anything that has to do with efficiency will happen. And it will happen not in 30 years. It will happen, we will start seeing it now with self-driving cars and truck drivers burning cars, and we'll see this with work unions that are suddenly being replaced with robots, and they don't have transferable skills. It's going to happen within the next 5 to 10 years.
So I want to get the audience a bit involved here. So I'll say a couple of jobs today, and then you lift your hand if you believe that job will be replaced by robots or AIs in the next 5 years. Truck drivers, surgeons, secretaries, teachers,
Interesting.
venture capitalists.
Here's hoping.
For sure. Here's wishful thinking.
But let's hone down on the truck drivers one, because actually it's something that we can see happening, right? There was a beer truck that went from one part of the U.S. to the other with a truck full of beer. It was driven by itself. Looking at the numbers quickly, there's 3.5 million truck drivers in the U.S., 8.7 million people that support truck driving. And if you actually, I said I wouldn't get into politics, but if you look at the red states in the recent U.S. elections, a number of the red states had truck drivers as the #1 profession in that state. So if you're a truck driver sitting in Alabama and you hear about all these self-driving trucks, you might start wondering what might happen. I still think you have enough time to start lobbying against it, and enough time to actually start making a ruckus about the fact that those robots are not safe and that you should still have a job. Does anybody agree with that?
I read somewhere that the lobbyists are actually arguing that they're not worried about it because they want the humans to sit in there. And what are these guys are going to do? They're going to read a book, watch a movie, I don't know. But they're not going to do anything. But the idea is that they would stay in there for safety.
Well, that's what happens on your plane today. There's a pilot who's flying an autopilot.
But there's a whole bunch of evidence that when you have systems where autopilots and stuff, the human beings get lazy, they're bored out of their friggin' minds, they're not paying attention, their skills aren't as honed as they should be because they're not flying every day. Then there is an issue where they do need the human to step in and they're not prepared and they crash the damn thing and kill everybody. So, you need to go, if you're gonna go automation, you need to go all the way, get the humans out of there because they're not gonna add any value in a real situation. And then it becomes, what do these 3.5 million people do? Now, I'm from Arkansas. In Texas, and my dad went bankrupt, and I worked as a busboy in a truck stop. You can't retrain these guys, man. I'm sorry. You can have the outliers that are special people, but for the vast majority of them, that's their job, and they're motivated by that. I don't know. They're not going to be really happy. They're voting crazy people in. I mean, good luck.
But I mean, I chose that one specifically because it's actually one that literally, I think, both recent political events, but actually even just technological advancements, we can actually see going there, right? We can see Mercedes and Volvo testing fleets across the U.S. There's an economic benefit from them following each other, from the drifting. But it actually has a big event. And actually, I purposely chose it as well because the average truck driver has a certain socioeconomic and education level, which you, Philip, actually felt pretty comfortable saying that they would want to embrace being retrained and being brought into the economy in a different way. I think
Again, the point that I want to make is that several of them. One, sure, there's going to be waves of disruption coming up on us, just as throughout history they have been. Should we over-dramatize them? Definitely we should highlight them, and definitely we should try to study them. But besides that, we should also not overestimate the direct impact of what is called artificial intelligence. I've been passionate about machine learning for over 25 years. It's really tough to get the real artificial intelligence going. Yeah. Except from what all those tech companies are telling you, it's very, very hard. So even to get basic machine learning right, and that technology, again, has been around for 25 years, at scale, is not that evident. So I think we're still seeing a long phase of enhanced humans, and we're actually forever even, many jobs of enhanced humans. Yep. Humans in the center, human taking the decision. Why? Because of ethical reasons, for one. Not just legal, but ethical. Many of these systems that are automated will have tiny biases in them. So you want a human to take the decision. I'm thinking of bots in the conversational space. We'll have people needing to make conversational design. We'll have people that will actually make the last call. It's just going to be, at first now, and Salesforce we can do that already, like for example, okay, make an agenda appointment. Instead of like trying to compare this, it shouldn't be a human, you just give the options to the human, boom, done, right? If you have 20 people that need to agree on the agenda. And there's tons of low-hanging fruit like that can be taken away, and again, time given back. Now, to get back to your truck driver question, I don't know all the truck drivers, sure, so I can't say, yeah, they're all ready to be retrained. But again, if we dig back into what are the core human qualities, we have to admit that we're actually pretty feeble species, right? We think we're physically strong, but we're actually not. Like the temperature that we can exist in, the physical forces, compared to robots and stuff. Same with our mental capacities. We actually overestimate them, right? But what we are very, very good at is empathy, and it's going to be a long time before machines get into empathy. We're very good in human interactions, connecting with the humans, and if we can re-put that in the center, there's so much new stuff to be done. New jobs to be invented. I was saying, conversational designers, like, who knew that we would have so much social marketers and that we would have all these shifts? We have Airbnb. Who would have guessed 10 years ago that we would have Airbnb and a whole economy growing out of it, which is now shown it's not replacing the hotels, it's on top of the hotels, right? There's all these phenomenons that because at first they were screaming murder, the hotels, et cetera, were going to be replaced by Airbnb. No, all the studies show that actually Airbnb has been positive in all the big cities, San Francisco included, so for the hotels as well. There's more occupancy. And so many of these things are not linear. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think a lot of our attention should go into redesigning things, reimagining, putting all the power, us from the so-called lucky ones that have intellectual jobs or whatever you call it. I think everybody could have intellectual jobs, focusing on other humans, et cetera, empathy, and get all the lower level stuff automated.
So the truck drivers don't have jobs. They don't need a co-working space.
It's a shame.
What does a platform like yours become? Can you also become a retooling or re-education platform?
Well, I'm not as concerned. I think the change is going to be incremental. I mean, you look at, we were talking about earlier, Amazon Go, which is really interesting, and that will impact one small sector, one small job. And there'll be a number of these new technologies that will slowly push people out. But I think you look at the demographics and the jobs that we're doing now, as you rightfully said, were very different to the jobs we were doing 30 years ago or 20 years ago. So undoubtedly, there'll be an incremental change, but as a next generation comes in or as new technologies come in, then automatically you get retrained and get repositioned. So I think it's something we've got to be aware of, but not something that concerning. It's certainly not as much of a doomsday view.
So on new and different jobs, just one statistic, an independent study done for the Salesforce ecosystem, so not Salesforce alone. In Europe alone, we estimate that there's going to be at least about 1 million jobs that's going to be created in the Salesforce ecosystem. So that's our partners, other startups in our App Exchange, et cetera, et cetera. 1 million jobs by 2020, right? Globally, 1.9 million. And that's a pretty fair estimate, actually. And that's just around Salesforce. Like, you put that on Slack, on Airbnb, on many new players that are just shift-shaping, creating new types of jobs that didn't exist. Right? So I think, again, we should highlight, sure, that there's going to be disruption coming upon us, that society might get ready with analyzing, but we should double down, especially on all the things that allow us to reimagine what those jobs for the future are going to entail, how to bring people on board, etc.
Yeah, I can give you an example. So the New York Times built a bot. So they publish something like 300 stories a day, and editors need to, from that 300, decide which stories should get posted to social and which will be which to each different type of social, which is most likely to go viral. And so that had historically been a job that editors would do, and instead, they built a bot. It's called Blossom Bot, and it allows editors to just say, like, Blossom Bot, what's most likely to go viral on Facebook? And it will tell them, based on predictive analysis of historically and what's currently in their repertoire of stories, what they should publish. And the average Blossom Bot predicted post gets 380% more clicks than when an editor just chooses on their own. So clearly, this was a job that editors weren't very good at to begin with. So like, take that job away from them, automate it, make it simple, and let the editors focus on creating better news.
Yep. So actually, think about the enhancement, right? And I think in the short term, I do think we get enhanced by it. I think your view is actually a bit more of replacement between robots and humans. But the example that we were talking about earlier is X-ray technicians. So the world's best X-ray technician might have looked at 200,000 X-rays in their life and actually be able to look at that chest X-ray and find the one thing that might be wrong with you, where a computer vision algorithm can look at 100,000 X-rays in 2 seconds. In the short term, my desire or my hope is that actually that technician actually becomes enhanced by the computer vision. And in a way, I still want a human being able to diagnose me holistically, aided by the computer. But technically, today, I think there's technology that could probably make that decision on their own without a doctor in the middle. I think just socially and even culturally, we're not ready to accept that. But so from a replacement perspective, which was your earlier thesis, you see the replacement happening much faster in terms of like the robots being capable in factory floors, on cars, in the air, to replace what we do today.
Yeah, I think it's happening much quicker than we perceive it to be, and at the moment it's hitting sort of a social layer that is not is not sexy. It's factory workers and but the truck drivers are definitely going to make an impact. But ultimately it's an inevitable process of optimization and of efficiency and competitiveness. The German government has launched an initiative around this Industry 4.0, which talks about hyper-efficiency, talks about wherever you can replace a human, do that as a rule. And the initial thought was, let's be competitive against China, where they have low-cost labor. But China is estimated to be investing in 2017, 500,000 robotic arms. So they're not waiting. They're investing in this future, and they themselves, see that this arbitrage opportunity of low-cost labor is not sustainable, and they are the only game around in current political scene where they have a 25-year plan compared to the rest of us that have a 4-year plan at best. And then most of the tax money is controlled by institutions who have mysterious agendas. So we are, ultimately, it's going to be countries competing on lifestyle and resources. And I think that's something that we need to look at more carefully.
Go ahead.
So I was asking, so you talked about replacement. What about enhancement? I mean, you're seeing these exoskeleton robots being produced for the military, in Japan, for assistance of elderly. What about robots making what's a fairly weak biological body stronger, more resilient?
Oh, there are prosthetics. There are exoskeletons. Yeah, you can. There's a lot of effort going into exoskeletons and making super powerful humans, or replacing the biological parts of us with robotic parts that are stronger, better. At the moment, we're stuck. Surprisingly, what's blocking a lot of things is the dexterity of the hand. So in the typical Amazon warehouse, you have like a football field of robots and shelves, that are completely humanless. The only part that is still where a human is still needed is in the packing, the picking and packing. So the shelf comes to the packer, who is a human, and he just puts out his hand, picks up whatever it is in the work order, and puts it in a box. That has not yet been replaced by a robot, but they have a bounty every year, and within 2 years, that will be over too. So once the dexterity of the hand is solved, it opens up a whole lot of other opportunity for this hyper-efficiency trend.
Sorry.
I'm just going to jump in. I think it's interesting how people will view this idea of a doomsday. Getting rid of jobs is not a bad thing. It's not dystopian. The goal of the future is and should be 100% unemployment. We shouldn't have to work. We should be able to do the things that we want to do, that we're passionate about, whether it's writing or writing beautiful code or coming up with a great social marketing campaign. It should be fun, right? So it's a utopian future, the idea of replacing jobs, these lousy jobs, so that every one of us can have a lovely job. And that's the goal of automation. That's the goal of all the hard work we're doing in AI and with robotics, is so you don't have to spend 8 bloody hours every day picking something up and sticking it in a box for some rich person who just bought something. That's a sucky job. No one wants to do that. So I think that first off, what I say is the idea of augmenting us or replacing us, it's not about a dystopian future. That's the dream, that we don't have to do this. But humans were so defined by work rather than family. We're so defined, especially in the West, by things that, I don't know, I just think that there's a lot of cultural changes that need to happen, especially for Americans, where we're so puritanical in our roots and that work is what defines us. No, it doesn't. There's far more interesting things in life than work.
I'd agree with it, but then taking it from an angle of use of vocabulary, so in the end, and often it's interesting actually to look at words and where they come from. The etymology in France, the same word for a company and for society, it's société, is the same word, right? Sorry if I wasn't clear. So, company and society is the same word in French. You're going to say they're socialists, right? But I think that it points to a very strong thing that I at least believe in, and I think at Salesforce as well. It's a social function of the company. They're both ingrained, right? So if you see the company of just a forcing kind of vehicle to put people into some kind of job they don't want to do, sure. If you see it as a big family of people that are trying to accomplish something together, then no. So we want to be displaced. Yeah, we want to displace the things that we shouldn't be doing within that company. Société, being together, right? Society, where we are together, where we're collaborating together as one big family towards a simple goal. There's nothing as powerful, I think, as that kind of common goal, which also, by the way, and I think we're going to see that as a society shift. I've been teaching a lot, so I've been hearing all the younger generations how important it is for them to see the social impact of what they do, right? We've seen, and we discussed that before this panel, the shift, right? People used to work to survive, to eat something, then they worked for having a bit of money to go and buy it. Then now there's a class, at least, and a lot of people that are capable of having jobs that are interesting. Now the next generations, and the generations coming on board now, they need to see what their social added value is. They're very interested in that. They're asking that. And the companies that are waging the wars of talent, they will be shift-shaping because of this. It will be different leaders leading this company. We see it in our company, right? The 1-1-1 model, and again, how we together stand for something is super important. So again, société, society, they go hand in hand. And then you don't need to replace these jobs. You just need to replace what is boring and can be automated, has no added value in the job.
And the replacement piece, I'm not devaluing it, but I also think there are some very serious, pressing concerns that face society outside of that, the environment, health, a lot of different areas, and we really need to be doing everything we can to increase productivity from the people that are trying to solve those problems. So the bits that get me excited are imagining that editor who can now devote more time to better journalism, or the researcher who is not spending, how many people do you think have jobs that that involve them every day. They take one group of cells in a spreadsheet and go put it in another spreadsheet every morning.
And
That's how they
there's
start
media
their day.
buyers in the room. Don't be so mean.
Sorry. But those are the types of tasks that it's like, let's get rid of that crap and let's let those people focus on finding the cure for the thing that needs curing, or fixing the environment, or whatever it is. So it doesn't necessarily, you're right, it's not going to, I don't know how you do the cost-benefit analysis on that, but I do know that there are some urgent issues that do need addressing and getting more productivity. And we have an expression at Slack, which is work hard, go home. And so that's really what we're looking to do. We don't want to have that creep of, oh, but I didn't finish putting all my spreadsheets into other spreadsheets today. Yep. That's taken care of. Just do the bits of your day that are most important.
So I think the société piece, or the social contract piece, is actually something that we are all going to have to face, right? I think it's actually a really interesting debate that we are not going to solve from this panel. But it's, a journalist asked me once on stage, and I was talking about machine learning and innovation. She's like, well, but the innovation that you're funding is actually going to displace jobs, and people are going to be unemployed. Shouldn't you be responsible, i.e. taxed, for the jobs that you displaced? And it caught me off guard, but that's just been nagging me for 2 years. And no, I don't think I should be responsible, but should we as society be responsible? And then what does responsible mean? So, what should we do, right? Do we all carry a tax to take those people who are now unemployed and actually re-educate them and bring them back into the economy? Sweden actually thrives in entrepreneurship because you have a really strong safety net. But you also have a 70% tax rate. How do we think about the education system and what we're teaching our kids today about what type of skill sets, but not only skill sets, but actually how they think about skill adoption throughout their life? And I think those things we can influence as parents today through our schools and the choices that we make. But I'd love to get your final take as the clock starts winding down on, like, what do you think, how do you think we can advise societies, corporations, or communities and our governments as to how we start talking about this stuff? Because it is going to happen in our lifetime.
Should we just go? So I think I would argue that we as a species need to have some sort of a massive safety net where individuals can thrive. So whether you call it the universal basic income, something where people no longer have to work to live. And then you really, truly free them up to find out what are the jobs they really want to do. But that's very unpalatable for the vast majority of people. It's really divisive, that sort of concept. But that's what I think you need to do. It's coming, this sort of automation, replacement. Let's all just acknowledge it and figure out a way. And that's more the utopian Star Trek type future. I think we're far more likely to have a dystopian where we see balkanization, people paying taxes to go visit cities, to use the parks, and very rich people living in enclaves, protecting themselves with armed guards. I mean, so it could go either way. I'm hopeful, but that's my view. Universal basic income, make it happen.
So let me just take the angle of education then. Again, these are super complex questions, but if you take it from the angle of education, then you start preparing for the challenges that's going to come upon that youth. And hence, again, showing them the really core important ways that data is shaping society and how it will be shaping society, making them understand what data really means, their own data usage, but their future roles within that, data/automation, and how they go together. It can be taught, right? It will make more responsible individuals, more responsible future leaders that will shape this world in something more or less dystopian, who can tell? But there's definitely a lot of work in the education to be done. We, for one side, as I said, in our 1-1-1 model, we go out to teach kids code, to teach kids, bring them in the world of technology, data, what does it mean, play around with the likes, with some of our own tools, but with Legos and stuff, and really help them understand those concepts, which you can start at a very early age. I think there's also a sense of entrepreneurial reinforcement that can come in most educational systems that is just not there, and that is going to be very important. Because again, the other piece where society will shape is by auto-shaping through entrepreneurship. I was yesterday at the Techstars party. It's just amazing. Again, something we wouldn't have imagined that 10 years ago, that we would have all around the world all these hubs with amazing talent, and tons of people that are collaborating, creating totally new things. And again, if we prepare our youth, they will not only create these new things for the sake of creating it and making money, but for the sense of adding value, of having sense in what they do. You know, as you said, solving some of our big society problems, like in the climate, and many more. And that we don't just need more stuff in general, right? Trying to shape how we see the functioning, the flows within society, right? Not more stuff, not just more software and things that go around like wasting time, but again, focus on sense. And sure, we're coming through massive changes, but I think that change can still be managed.
Alia?
I think it shouldn't take the impending robot apocalypse to get us to acknowledge that we just need to improve the education system, full stop.
Exactly.
There are entire groups of people that we've never really seen much value in teaching science or technology to. We could start by making sure that those groups of people receive a fair education. So I think that there is a lot of stuff that needs to happen regardless of automation, regardless of, and you know, the market will also in some ways help to take care of that. Like we do see organizations recognizing that like, crap, we need more engineers, we don't have them, we better start training them. So I definitely think that there's like just a natural responsibility that we share as human beings to make sure that people are given the full chance from day one. So no need to worry too much about the robot apocalypse forcing that function. I think that just being good humans should take care of it.
Yeah. So I think you need to have skills, transferable technical skills. Of course, if you study math and science, then you're good to go. I mean, you can't strive for job security, and that's not going to happen. That's going to go out. There is no such thing as job security, and that's so in the tech industry, that's kind of the accepted. If you look at somebody's CV and he's worked 25 years in HP, you don't want that guy, typically. But if you look at a CV and they've gone through every 3 years a different company, it's an acceptable thing. 50 years ago, that would have been totally unacceptable. So that will probably go beyond just the tech industry. It's your versatility and your experience are what makes you eligible to change job or find usefulness when the robots take over whatever it is that you're doing. But I think in terms of forward-looking, I think the one thing we really need to address is the usefulness of governance. The current framework that we've inherited from previous tyrannies and kingdoms is not fit for purpose anymore. In the modern age, we should be much more as citizens, or either citizens of a government of a country or citizens of a multinational. We should be more involved in where our tax money goes. And at the moment, it's just a black box that then is managed by other people, and we are defocused from the real issues. And I think in the future we need, maybe not us, but our whoever will be in the future should be in a different kind of democracy where maybe there's going to be a referendum app that we continuously are engaged in governance. And a government Facebook where we are continuously...
Unfortunately, republics only change with revolutions, as our French friends can remind us, but yeah. David?
I mean, so my closing remarks in it is that I think humans, first of all, we have a social responsibility. So, I mean, that comes first and foremost. As amazing and great as productivity is, you know, we have the thought of moving towards AI and losing a number of jobs without educating and giving people the tools to get new work is sort of unacceptable and something we can't stomach. But I mean, the most importantly is I think we're adaptable, right? Humans are adaptable. You look at the changing economy as has happened over the last 50 years and the changing roles. Previously, people would come out of university, they'd become a lawyer or they'd become an accountant. If they didn't do that, you know, you'd fall out of favor with your parents. But I think what we're going to see in the future, certainly in the short view, is far more people entering the freelancer market, far more people finding a niche, a skill set that fits their, you know, sort of a job or a role that fits their skill set. And I think we're seeing bigger businesses now look more towards freelancers. And I think that certainly is the short to medium term trend. We're going to see far more, we're going to see corporates working differently and more individuals working for themselves. So whilst there may be some roles, some people who are losing jobs, I think people will find their niche, and it's our responsibility to give them the support they need to get there.
Good. Big flashing red light, which means our time is up. But thank you so much for the panel. Thank you all for your
Thank you.
opinions. Thanks so much for attention.